I was picking up my granddaughter from high school the other afternoon when she slid into the passenger seat, carrying a very specific, heavy atmosphere with her. She wasn't displaying the typical signs of teenage frustration. There were no tears, no furrowed brow, no slam of the door. Instead, she looked completely hollow. It was as if someone had reached inside and flipped the switch on her internal spark, leaving her in the dark. She is only 15 years old. I attempted to make small talk, asking how her classes went, but she offered nothing more than a non-committal raise of her shoulders. I probed a bit deeper, asking if a specific event had upset her, but she denied it. We drove for a while in the quiet, the tires humming against the pavement, until she finally broke the silence with a question that has been echoing in my mind ever since. She turned to me and whispered, "Grandpa, do you ever get the feeling that absolutely nothing you do has any point? That none of it actually counts for anything? My name is George, and I have walked this earth for 87 years. I have navigated through global conflicts, economic collapses, heartbreaking family tragedies, and my own profound personal failures, mistakes I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. Yet, that single inquiry from my granddaughter rattled my very bones. Why? Because I have wrestled with that exact existential doubt more times than I care to admit. The only true distinction between us is our vantage point. I am standing at the sunset of my life looking backward, while she is standing at the sunrise looking forward. Hovering somewhere between those two perspectives, I believe I have finally grasped a fundamental truth. We currently reside in a society that is absolutely fixated on the concept of impact. Everyone is desperate to leave a massive legacy, to shake the foundations of the world, and to be immortalized in history books. I see this obsession everywhere I look. Young people chase high-status careers solely because they believe it will make them significant. They curate their lives online, hunting for digital validation from strangers. They quantify their self-worth by how many people recognize their faces. I understand that drive. Truly, I do. However, after spending nearly 9 decades on this planet, I have discovered a paradox. The actions that hold the most weight usually feel completely weightless while you are performing them. Allow me to share a story about my former neighbor, a woman named Margaret. She lived just 3 doors down from my home for 42 years. Margaret was a 3rd-grade teacher, a vocation she held for her entire working life. She never married, and she never raised children of her own. When the time finally came for her to retire, the school held a modest gathering in the drafty gymnasium. It was a humble affair, perhaps 30 people attended. There were no news cameras, no grand speeches that would be recorded for posterity. She received a generic plaque and a simple bouquet of grocery store flowers. 2 years later, she slipped away quietly in her sleep. When the day of her funeral arrived, I anticipated a very sparse attendance. Margaret had always been a private, unassuming soul. However, when I walked through the church doors, I was stunned. The place was packed to the rafters. It was standing room only. Then, the testimonials began. One by one, strangers stood up to testify to the power of this quiet woman. A prominent surgeon approached the pulpit and confessed that Margaret was the very first adult who made him believe he was intelligent. A woman who directed a major charity explained that Margaret had taught her to read when the rest of the system had given up on her. A middle-aged man, holding the hand of his own daughter, wept as he said he became an educator solely because of the example Margaret set. Story after story unfolded, trajectories shifted, destinies altered, all because of a woman who thought she was simply clocking in to do her job. Margaret never set out to change the world. She never chased fame or recognition. She simply showed up every single morning and gave her full attention to the small humans standing in front of her. She memorized their names. She sensed when they were hurting. She stayed late to explain fractions or vocabulary words. It wasn't glamorous work. It wasn't the kind of thing that makes headlines. But the shockwaves from her quiet life are still traveling through time, touching people she will never meet. I believe we have completely misunderstood the definition of mattering. We assume that to matter, we must be seen by millions and applauded by crowds. But that is not how the architecture of life actually works. Life is constructed from the invisible mortar between the bricks, the small, uncelebrated interactions between human beings. It is a conversation that reframes a friend's outlook, a random act of kindness delivered exactly when someone is on the brink of despair, showing up when it is inconvenient, choosing to listen when you would rather speak. The trick is that these moments never feel significant while they are happening. They feel mundane, they feel routine, they are incredibly easy to dismiss as unimportant. To really understand this, I have to take you back to when I was 39 years old. I was standing on the precipice of a total collapse. My small business was hemorrhaging money, and the stress was eating me alive. I was self-medicating with alcohol far too often and sleeping far too little. I felt like a fraud in every aspect of my life. One rainy Tuesday evening, I found myself sitting in my idling car outside a local dive bar. I was gripping the steering wheel, fighting a war inside my head, trying to decide whether to walk through those doors and numb the pain. Suddenly, a tap on the glass made me jump. It was a man named Tom. We were barely acquaintances. I think we had shaken hands twice at neighborhood events. He didn't look at the bar. He just leaned down and said, "Hey, I was just walking to the diner to get a slice of pie and some coffee. You look like you could use a break. Come join me?" It wasn't a grand intervention. There was no dramatic music. It was just an invitation for caffeine. We sat in a booth at that diner for 2 hours. The most remarkable thing about that conversation was how unremarkable it was. Tom didn't pry into my misery. He didn't try to offer life coaching or fix my financial ruin. We just talked about the mundane. He spoke about his kids' soccer games, a history book he was struggling to finish, and a road trip he took in his 20s. And somehow, amidst that completely trivial chatter, the storm inside me began to quiet down. My heart rate slowed. When we walked out, I didn't go back to the bar. I drove home, to my family. I couldn't tell you the specifics of what we discussed that night, but the existence of that moment was monumental. It acted as a circuit breaker, shifting the entire trajectory of my evening and perhaps saving my future. The irony is, Tom probably forgot about that pie and coffee by the next morning. That is the true nature of mattering. Real impact is almost never loud. It doesn't announce its arrival with trumpets. You are never going to receive a push notification on your phone alerting you that you just saved someone from despair. The vast majority of the time, you will remain oblivious. You will perform a gesture that feels microscopic to you, yet it will mean the entire universe to the recipient. You will walk away thinking nothing happened, while they walk away changed forever. My late wife Eleanor understood this instinctively. She was a prolific letter writer. I'm talking about old-fashioned correspondence, ink, paper, stamps, the whole works. She wrote to our children when they left for university. She sent notes to distant cousins, former neighbors, and friends she hadn't seen in decades. I used to tease her mercilessly about it. I'd say, "Elle, it's the 21st century. Just pick up the phone. It's faster." She would just smile that patient smile of hers and keep writing. After she passed away, I had the heartbreaking task of sorting through her things. I found shoeboxes full of replies people had sent her over the years. Reading them was a revelation. Almost every single letter mentioned how much her notes meant to them. People confessed that they had kept her letters in nightstand drawers for years, pulling them out to read when they felt lonely or hopeless. Eleanor wasn't trying to build a legacy. She was simply reaching out. Yet, her impact was enormous. Here is the wisdom I wish someone had gifted me when I was a young man. Your life does not need to be extraordinary to be valid. In fact, striving for constant exceptionalism is often a trap. The modern pressure to stand out, to go viral, to make a massive splash, that pressure destroys people. It convinces them that a normal life is a failed life. It makes them feel that showing up for their job, loving their family, and being polite to strangers counts for nothing unless it is packaged into a viral video or a best-selling biography. But the absolute truth is this: the infrastructure of our world is held together by people whose names will never be in history books. It is sustained by parents who wake up at 3 a.m. to comfort a feverish child, by employees who take pride in doing their work correctly when no one is watching, by friends who send a text just to check in, by volunteers who serve soup, clean up local parks, and sit with the sick, by citizens who vote, who recycle, and who return their shopping carts to the corral. These are the small, unremarkable stitches that keep the fabric of society from tearing apart. So, how do you actually measure if you matter? I believe the answer lies not in looking at yourself, but in looking at the faces directly across from you. Ask yourself these harder questions. Are you truly present when someone is speaking to you, or are you just waiting for your turn to talk? Are you honest, even when a lie would be more convenient? Do you offer kindness to people who can do absolutely nothing for you? Do you keep your word? Do you have the capacity to sit with someone in their grief and the lack of envy, to truly celebrate their success? You will never win an award for these things. They won't get you verified on social media or land you on the cover of a business magazine. But make no mistake, these are the metrics that determine if a life was wasted or if it was meaningful. I have been meditating on my granddaughter's question for days now. Does anything I do actually matter? I've come to realize that the flaw isn't in the answer, it's in the question itself. When we ask if we matter, we are usually secretly asking if we are important. We are asking if we are influential, famous, or exceptional. But true significance doesn't operate like that. Significance is quieter. It is intimate. It is the knowledge that your specific presence or your absence would shift the gravity of someone else's world. Let me give you an example. When my grandson was 7 years old, he developed a paralyzing fear of water. He wouldn't even dip a toe in a swimming pool. That summer, I made a choice. For 3 weeks straight, I spent 15 minutes a day just standing with him in the shallow end. I didn't try to teach him to swim. I didn't lecture him on bravery. I didn't splash him. I just stood there, a steady anchor, while he acclimated to the environment. By August, he was paddling around on his own. Today, he is 23 years old. I guarantee he has no memory of those silent 15-minute sessions. But I remember. I know that if I hadn't been there, patient, steady, and available, that fear might have hardened into a permanent part of his psyche. That is what mattering looks like. It wasn't impressive. It wasn't heroic. But it was real. The closer I get to the end of the road, the more I see that the things we chase are mostly smoke and mirrors. Social status evaporates. Professional achievements gather dust. People will forget your job title faster than you can imagine, but they will never, ever forget how you made them feel in their presence. They won't forget that you saw them when the rest of the world looked right through them. Those feelings stick. They are the echoes that continue after we are gone. Just last week, I was in the checkout line at the grocery store. The young woman scanning my items looked like she was carrying the weight of the world. Her movements were heavy, and there were deep shadows under her eyes. I could have easily just swiped my card and walked away. Instead, I paused. I looked her in the eye and asked, "How are you holding up today?" I didn't ask it as a greeting. I asked it as a question. She paused, looking almost startled that a customer saw her as a human being. Her eyes welled up immediately. She whispered that she was working double shifts to pay for her mother's medical bills. We spoke for less than 3 minutes. I simply told her that what she was doing was honorable and that her mother was blessed to have a daughter like her. When I grabbed my bags to leave, she thanked me twice. Now, did that conversation solve her financial problems? No. Did it change the world? No. But did it matter to her in that specific moment? To be seen and validated? I believe it did. So, this is the answer I am bringing back to my granddaughter, and perhaps it is the answer you need, too. Yes, what you do matters, but it probably doesn't matter in the way you have been taught. It matters in the microscopic moments. It matters in the unglamorous hours that no one will ever applaud. It counts when you choose patience instead of snapping in anger, when you offer the hard truth instead of the easy lie, when you stay and support someone when running away would be so much simpler. Your life does not need to be a spectacle to be significant. It just needs to be honest. It needs to be present. It needs to be kind. And frankly, that is much harder than it sounds. Those virtues require you to pay close attention to the world outside your own head. They require you to show up when you are exhausted. But that is where the gold is hidden, not in the spotlight, but in the quiet, steady work of being a human being connecting with other human beings. I am 87 years old. My time is finite. When I look back and evaluate the worth of my time here, I don't think about the money I made or the awards on my shelf. I think about the people I loved well. I think about the times I listened without interrupting. I think about the help I gave without expecting a receipt. Those are the things that mattered. Those are the only things that endure. If these words resonated with you today, I would be grateful if you shared this message with someone who might be feeling invisible. Leave a comment below and tell me one small act of mattering you plan to do today. And if you want to hear more from an old man who is still figuring things out, please subscribe. I have a few more thoughts to share before I'm done, and I'd love to share them with people who are willing to listen.